The Juggernaut was known in life as Horace Breaker Mahoney. Horace was born oversized and horribly disfigured, spending his childhood as an outcast. His mother abandoned him at an early age, and his father put him to work in their junkyard, where Horace's teenage years were spent alone, crushing and chopping up old cars. His father died, and with no parent to steer him, the 7-foot-tall giant snapped. His first kill was a pair of female hitchhikers. He drove them back to the junkyard and tore them apart with his bare hands, feeding the pieces to his dogs. Many more kills followed. His M.O. was towing stranded motorists back to the yard where he would meticulously break every bone in their bodies. But his luck ran out, as it always does, the night he picked up an undercover female cop. It took over a dozen men to subdue the immense giant, 3 of whom lost their lives when Horace broke free of his handcuffs. But poor Horace's struggle eventually ended when 5 officers pumped nearly 50 rounds of ammo into him, and then another clip into his lifeless corpse, just to be sure.
Alright, as this is going to be a very long and very intense look, not long as in time, but long as in there's a lot to cover, we're going to go start to finish on the costume and the makeup, but first the costume. Making the name, take out a felt from the dollar store and trace it with chalk to get the general lines I'll be using as a guide. Obviously writing Mahoney as that is his last name, name tags generally have the last name on it. Once I've got that, I'm sewing each letter. Once I've got them sewed to my liking, which let me just tell you, some weren't, and I redid them. But thanks to the powers of editing, you will never see that. You will never see that footage. Just don't get discouraged at all if you do take a little bit of time to do this, because it generally does come with a little bit of mess up, especially doing this by hand and not getting it like online or anything. I'm cutting it down to size, and then I've glued it onto the uniform using hot glue. This uniform I actually got in the men's section at a thrift store for maybe like $2, so definitely shop in the men's section if you're looking for something like this, because it's generally quite a bit cheaper, unfortunately, for us women. Makeup though, I'm covering my eyebrows, not with Vaseline this time, or not only with Vaseline, but kind of a little bit of a run-of-the-mill prosthetic. This is purely just liquid latex and cotton swabs piled on with a wash of brown paint over top of them, as he does have a lot of disfigurations, I would say. But for the gunshots, I'm going to be showing you 2 ways to paint this look. The first is maybe the easiest, but with a slight learning curve, and that's with Tinsley transfers, which you can either get from a special effects store, hopefully in your area, or online as well, which is essentially a really cool band-aid. The idea behind these are that you're going to peel off the plastic cover on them, which will come with the transfers, flip them over so now the sticky side is on the paper, and stuck to it, and then cut to size. Peel the plastic piece off and then stick it to whatever piece or thing you're using. You want to ideally put this over a clean, dry area for the best results. I, however, am not doing this. I am putting it over the worst place I can to start, over a wet prosthetic that I've just recently painted. Shocker. You can help make this work by adding a little bit of liquid latex to make the edges stick better, but once it is placed down, put something damp over top and hold it. I usually hold them in place for about 10 seconds, multiple places until the entire sheet is soaked. Then there's going to be, to get to a point around here, yep, there it is. I actually use it the way it's supposed to be used for. See, it works quite a bit better. The secondary version is going to be with scar wax though, and that is going to be started out with spirit gum, placing it wherever you want the gunshots to go, aka the scar wax. And once it's tacky, I'm going to be rolling up a piece of scar wax into a ball and placing that down. Rolling it with Vaseline with my fingers, I'm smoothing out the edges. I'm personally going to be using a makeup brush, but any kind of tool with a cylindrical and rounded end to it is going to work out because you just want that end specifically. It will work out perfect just as long as you have a generous amount of Vaseline over top of it as well. After I've made it look like I want, I'm sealing with liquid latex. And finally coming in with a paint job. This is going to be a light wash of white water activated paint, as this complexion is definitely washed out. For overall, I'm going to be using a blending sponge that's been dampened, but for detailing itself, getting into like the nooks and the crannies and such, I'm going to be using a brush. Again, water activated paint with this. To give it a more sickly look, or to give him, or me I guess, a more sickly look, I'm going to be coming in with a gray eyeshadow on my collarbone. It's going to be a darker cool tone gray, and also my neck bones to make them look further sunken in. Then the water activated paint and blood comes in. Both with dry running blood and scab blood. I decided to add a little bit more dimension to my face by using that same gray eyeshadow and using it all around my nose. If it does get too harsh, you can definitely go in over it, as I did, with a water activated paint to mild it down, the same one that I had on the blending sponge. The eye makeup is incredibly easy. That was purely a dark purple eyeshadow all over the lid. And a little bit under, blending out with the gray tone as well that we used before, or I used before. Mascara over top of the lashes, or rather on the lashes, not over top, on the lashes. The lips, I'm adding some gray around them, blending it out with a very dispersed blending brush, then adding a gray lipstick tapped over and then blending it onto my finger. You're just going to use a little bit tapped on. And then black in the center very mildly, because black can get extremely out of hand extremely fast. I've also used these stipple stones to stipple some fake blood all over my entire face, neck, and chest. And lastly, my teeth, which I'm going to be using an alcohol activated specifically for milk-suited paints in nicotine. That was a mouthful. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'll see you in my next one. Happy Halloween, guys! Ooh.